right? Like, hey everyone, welcome back to the live stream. We are here on Thursday for the Rewiring the Trauma Matrix and Reclaiming Your Power Back in Business. My name is Allegra Jackson, the marketing medulla. I'm here with Emma Lyons, who is the, you know what? She's so much, I don't even know what to call you anymore, but basically she helps you get through all of that trauma right now, right? You can call her the trauma matrix coach. Is that what we're calling you right now?
Okay, yeah. I help people unwind from their trauma so they can actually thrive being who they really are.
I always give titles. Okay. So thank you, Emma, for coming through again as we are coming through this series of just understanding what the trauma matrix actually is. So that's number
Mm,
one. And then streamlining through that process. Like if you have never identified in your life that this is part of who you have been, it can feel a little overwhelming, right? It
oh
can
yeah.
feel a little bit like caught off guard, like, okay, I never thought about it that way. But we're here to kind of streamline some things that we know. Emma, you have taught me a lot about being open to receiving, understanding what that looks like. I still have my money jars, okay.
Yay.
um, I still buy my clothes with pockets, okay.
That's good. Good woman.
So you have really adjusted the identity measure, right? Like who am I really? Like I can earn money, I can make more money, I can earn happy money. And then now we're talking about just really getting into the understanding of where we are in our headspace and where else are we not open to receiving. um we talked about this trauma matrix, and I want people to understand what it is. And today we're going to go over how the actual trauma matrix that you teach, how it plays out in business. But before we do that, I want you to tell them what you do, and if there's anything you would like to share about how you support the people that you work with.
Yeah, cool. I love being here and chatting to you every week, Allegra. And my name is Emma, and what I do is I work with a lot of women, and I really help them disconnect from all the trauma that women have taken on from childhood and from all the BS that we experience and internalize so that we can actually thrive beyond the shame that we've internalized so that we can actually thrive doing what we're here to do without holding ourselves back or sabotaging ourselves and just do it, just do what we came here to do without struggling anymore. It sounds simple, but if you've got all of those, the voices saying you can't do it and you're sabotaging yourself, and it's difficult. It's the real work is this of succeeding in business, because the strategies are out there. You could, if it was as easy as just following a strategy, everyone would be successful, right? But it's this inner work. You really your business is a reflection of you, particularly if you're selling something that you make or that you do. It's so important. You have to grow yourself while you're growing your business if you're serious about really thriving and really getting to the next level, because business is a it's like a boot camp of personal development. You got to grow if you want your business to grow. So that's what we're talking about here today. And also doing it without burning yourself out, without killing yourself. That's the other thing. Some people get to be successful, but at what cost? And you know what? You can be successful and you can have balance in your life as well. So that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about killing yourself, burning yourself out, and only being able to do it for 6 months. You want to be able to keep the success going and get consistency and balance.
Yeah, I think it's so important to know that even the most successful individuals in life that I've met have all had coaches, consultants, mentors, people around them that are part of their advisory. So, this is a success measure to really get support in areas where you feel like you're lacking, right? Like if you feel like, hey, if you resonate in some of these areas where Emma is talking about, you got to connect, you got to get the support. Um, Today I want to talk about these roles because the first thing that kind of came up for me, Emma, it kind of shocked me when I talked about how the what you teach, how that plays out in business, right? Like the
Oh yeah.
roles.
Yes.
You mentioned scapegoating. So we'll get to that, okay?
Okay. Okay.
But the number one thing that came up was over functioning leadership.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Um, that one came up first, and it talked about the dynamic of that, right? That being the hero. They call it the parentified child, right?
Yeah.
Who had to like really hold it all together. And when it's especially when I think about a lot of things, and I'm the oldest, so I was supposed to be that, right? I was not. I refused everything. I was like, I'm not doing it. I did it, but I refused, right? So
Yeah.
over functioning leadership though comes from this dynamic where if you grew up being the hero or always having to be the parent when your parents weren't around,
Yeah.
then I think it's important to understand how that does play out in your leadership skills, especially when it comes to operating your business, right? So if you have done that, then often you become an over functioning entrepreneur or over functioning manager. And the three areas of impact that it says that it hits is micromanaging your teams.
Oh,
that's
yeah. Mm-hmm.
that's one. Number two, difficulty delegating.
Mm-hmm.
And number three, burnout and resentment. So I want to just stop there and have you comment on those three areas, and then I'll share the study insight.
Yeah, because you're micromanaging because you're trying to stay in control and you don't trust anyone else to do it. I have to do it myself. I have to, nobody else can do it as well as me. So there's a resistance to delegating. There it means you burn yourself out because you're basically like holding on and you don't trust anyone to do it properly. Only you can do it properly. So it's a recipe for burnout. There's no doubt about it because the people who succeed in a sustainable way, they delegate things. They don't spend time, doing the little things. They do it. They stick in their area of genius, in their zone of genius, and get people to help them. And this is this kind of belief can come. It's like about control, but it's also this belief. It's hyper independence. You think I don't need anyone. I can do it on my own because you've been trained. That was how you were trained to cope as a child, and you become the strong one because nobody else showed up, and you felt that you had to carry it all. So we and then we internalize it. We think this is really powerful, but actually, because it's coming from a place of fear wrapped up in competence, it's not really freedom. It's actually a chain that keeps you tied down and doesn't let you really thrive, also financially, but also in other ways, in terms of your time, in terms of your energy, and also financially, because if you're stuck doing everything, there's only so many hours in the day.
Mm. Fear wrapped in confidence. That's interesting. It kind of hit me when you said it because I think that's very true for a lot of people. I work with entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs that are very, independent, right? It's like,
Oh, yeah.
oh, I don't know, no one can do it like I can type energy. And I think it kind of resonates with that, always really being responsible
Yes.
for the family dynamic. This study insight that it talked about, because those three areas, micromanaging teams, like who wants you to be over their shoulder all the time? I remember working for a sales
Oh
company
my
and
God,
being
yeah.
that person to be like, okay, I'm gonna tell people what to do, and they're like, you already told us what to do, like we're good, you don't have to tell us and keep telling
Yeah.
us and keep checking, and and it's annoying. So if you're micromanaging your teams, especially if you're trying to grow a team, a lot of times that's why people walk, like we call those type of businesses the revolving door business. Like
Oh,
people will
yes.
come in and they'll go right back out. They don't want to be under your leadership. It's really hard because they're constantly being looked at and judged, and like they're there to do a job. Let them do their job. Difficulty delegating and burnout and resentment. And the study said that it actually talked about this leadership responsibility, like or the family responsibility. It predicts what they call a leadership identity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you hinted towards that, right? You talked about that. And it also correlates, and this is really where it got me, Emma. I was like,
Yeah.
this is probably why women need to pay attention,
Oh,
because it
yes.
correlates to chronic stress. It didn't say stress, it says chronic stress.
Chronic
So
stress. Yeah.
we already know stress kills. But then we have a study that shows that this type of behavior leads to chronic stress and it leads to difficulty with teams. So not only can you not keep a team around, and that's why I hear a lot of times they're like, oh, well, I can't get good help. Maybe it's not the help.
Yeah. It's very likely not. It's the lowest common denominator. The common denominator for all of them is usually the thing involved. And if it's a revolving door, it's probably not the employees.
Well,
And
every company I've worked at, we already know what that looked like. It was like it's from the top down, guys.
yeah, and when you're in that space, it's like you think you're working hard, but actually you're in survival mode. You think you're being ambitious, but actually it's a trauma reflex. You're trying to outrun this fear and chaos that you have going on inside your head. So, and you feel like you have to keep going and keep speeding up and keep doing it faster and do it better. And you don't let yourself rest as a result of that. So, yeah, of course it leads to burnout and, performance collapse cycles where you're doing really well for a while, you're overachieving, and then you implode. You're silently imploding and burn yourself out. It's not resilience. It's trauma playing itself out. And we need to step outside of this performance. So before the body actually forces you to, that's the thing, because it will happen one day. It might not be today or tomorrow, but one day your body is going to force you to stop that because it can't handle doing it anymore.
Yeah. And this over functioning leadership normally
Mm.
happens when in the trauma matrix we talked about the dynamics of who you are when it comes to your family dynamics as well. And this
Yeah.
is where they said this is the parentified child, the hero, right? The
Yes.
the oldest most likely, right? The one that had to take care of the other siblings. I
Yes.
remember as a child, I had to kind of look at that and I thought that was a little weird, but it was always kind of established like, hey, you are the oldest, you set the example. If you see something happening, you better report it to me. Like, if you were always the one to be a leader in a space where, and here's where I would say to some people who may not have had healing in this space yet, right?
Yeah.
Because maybe you were put in a place as a leader, but you got to remember, at whatever age that was, maybe you weren't equipped to lead yet. So whatever happens in those moments, right? I think sometimes we carry the guilt and responsibility with us,
Definitely.
and so we want to release that. And I've been giving people permission all week long. Like, I'm like, you have permission to let go. you have
Yeah.
you have permission to let go. It's okay. And now we start with a new conversation of, well, what do you do, right? Over functioning leadership cannot operate in a business that you want to flourish with a team that's growing, happy, motivated, making money, right, for your business. Like, you can't have a team like that if they're walking out the door every time they see you stressing every day about whatever it is that you're
Yeah.
stressing
Because it's so stressful being around. Not only is it stressful for the person who's in that position, but it's stressful for everyone around them because stress is so contagious. If you're around someone who's like, oh my God, I've got to, you feel that. And it's really hard to be around that in the medium to long term.
Well, yeah, over functioning leaders. I mean, I've been that, so I can understand, right? And
Yeah.
this is where I come from, in a space where you can be the person where you're so, like, in control of everything that no one has space to breathe there. And that's not
Yeah.
good in a business, right? Like, if you are the person that always feels like you have the leadership identity, which I remember Emma even saying things, and some people may be able to relate. but saying things in my head no one else can hear, right? But me saying, I'm the leader in this room, I have to show up,
Okay.
right? Feeling the level of pressure, and it's not because I felt like, okay, that's just what I want to do. No, it was because there were other things, like my mom said it to me, a lot, and I saw the example in my life a lot. So you kind of, you're taught and you catch it. And so when
Exactly.
I think about, that hero role, guys, I think about that with overfunctioning leadership. When you have chronic stress, it is not like, it is very stressful to run an organization that should be ran where you replace yourself. But now people under you feel like you're hogging all the space. Have you ever been in a job like that where you're like, okay, give me a raise already, level me up already? But people are hogging the space. They're not giving you any advancement. So in your business, it's kind of like that, right? When you are a solopreneur, especially as a woman, and you're operating where you're like, I don't really trust people with my business. It's like, why not? There are people out there that can run your business better than you can.
Yeah, and that's the thing. People can't recognize that because that would mean, oh my God, that people have to believe that they're the only one who can do it. Because it comes from a survival place. You've got to prove that you're good enough. So it's coming from a proving place rather than a knowing place. That's the difference, isn't it? When you know, you know. It's like that. It's like those TikToks, when you know, you know. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. And when you need to
Yeah.
prove, it's freaking tiring. It's exhausting because you're constantly trying to prove to yourself or prove to other people that you're up to the level that you're supposed to be at. So
Yeah.
you're constantly kind of running on empty. You don't really believe it. Believing and knowing are two very different energies.
I truly believe that. I think, so that's just the first part where we're talking about over functioning leadership, which I think a lot of times, even in business, that can feel like the pressure of having to have the business look and feel a certain way before it is even there. So we will kind of go back to that, but I want to go through this because there's a couple other things that we're going to hit on. The second part, Emma, that we were talking about is avoidance of conflict. Avoidance of conflict. So this dynamic is very interesting because those of us who are from families where conflict was unsafe may avoid difficult conversations or
Oh, yeah.
decisions even when necessary. So I
Yes.
have to have a difficult conversation with my staff member, or I have to now have a conversation to hire someone, right? Those aren't easy conversations. Those are conversations that have to, number one, have maybe a skill set involved, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you may have to just be confident in what you want to do. Like, hey, I want to hire someone for this type of position. I need help building my business. I'm willing to, pay you this much. So, avoidance of conflict in this dynamic where if you're coming from a family where conflict anywhere in the picture was not safe for you, then when you get into the business, you're going to tolerate underperformance. You're going
Yeah.
to allow people to just run all over you. You're going to allow people to take, and they're going to be like, yeah, but you're paying me this week, right? But they did no work.
Yes.
You're going to
Yeah.
allow, this is crazy because it also talks about poor boundary setting with clients or collaborators, which means that you're going to let and I've seen this so many times. This is actually giving me a lot of awareness, Emma,
Yeah.
because if you have a business and you're not able to set good boundaries with your clients, then that means that they're going to set the boundary for you. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
tell you what they need, not
Yes.
what you need from them.
You're
And that's
able. Yeah.
dangerous because they're coming to you
Yeah.
for results.
Yeah. You
And the
need to
third
be
one,
setting the bar.
yeah, and then, well, before you go in, Emma, the last one was indecisiveness in negotiations. Like, you don't even know how to really decide on what it is that you really want. So, and a lot of times in negotiations, I love to negotiate because that means that you have a mindset where you're able to kind of, give someone some leeway and say, hey, I know enough about me and what I'm doing to go back and forth and see where we can meet in the middle, right? But you can't negotiate if you're not confident in that area. So your indecisiveness in negotiations, you're going to always give in, right? You're not going to know what to do. People are going to decide for you. Well, what were you saying, Emma? You were going. You're about to go in a minute ago.
Well, but this is like a lack of real confidence and empowerment. So there's a feeling of helplessness that it comes from that we learned as children, you know. So we kind of get stuck there where we were, because as children you don't have power. Your parents kind of have all the power and you have none. So you internalize, swallow, and you can swallow anger. You can tell everyone that you're fine, but you might be feeling really weak on the inside. So again, you could be stuck in survival mode and feeling very stuck, and that would mean that you wouldn't be able to engage with people from a place of confidence to and leadership to guide them in a way that's going to move things forward. And also this if you're not aligned with your own emotions and you don't know, you're kind of numb and dissociated, it can be hard to have those conversations because you're kind of programmed to keep everything light and vague and hidden and not go deep into it. So the conversations that are awkward or difficult can be really difficult from those places if you're dissociated or are numbing. So yeah, it's really it's about getting the balance right. And so like trauma can show up in so many different ways in the body and behavior, and you can have two people in exactly the same household and come out with two different kind of brands or strategies of surviving whatever the trauma was in the house or how they interpreted it.
Wow. It's just powerful. So that was really just getting into the avoidance of conflict. And, I think, like you said, it's like a survival mechanism. Like
Yeah,
you're
and
actually,
also this kind of comes to the fawning response. You know, you flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is the one that's a bit less talked about. It's like where you feel like you have to be nice. And again, it's a survival impulse because as a child, this is people who apologize all the time. And even when they're getting blamed, they fix things. You have to make yourself small. I talk about that in one of the things, like this kind of compulsive making yourself small so that you won't be a problem for other people. And if you're stuck in that mode, it's really, really hard to be a leader because you're just stuck in people pleasing mode. That's the only mode that you have.
yeah. And that's really bad in professional environments. Like you can't be in
Yeah.
people pleasing mode when you
People
are
will use
dealing
you
with,
as a doormat. Yeah, people will use you as a doormat, like no doubt about it, because you train people how to treat you. That's the hard reality. And most of us do it very unconsciously. But you train people how to respond to you. And if you let people treat you badly, people are going to do that. People are going to walk all over you. People are going to know, they see that. And people, they see people, they see their victims, they see people who they can walk all over, and they will. So our job is to really build those solid boundaries and to catch people when they're doing it and not let them do it to us. We've got to stand up for ourselves. We've got to have clear and firm boundaries with people who are maybe not or willing to do something that's not very nice to you or treat you badly. You've got to
yeah.
set the tone for how you're treated, just
You
like with your
know,
clients.
I think this is so interesting because it comes from a space that is so personal and it dips into such a, just every other area, right?
Yeah.
If I look at a family dynamic, right, and this is like what we're digging into is stuff that happens in our childhood that we're not even
Mhm.
recognizing at the time.
Yeah.
So these behaviors are embedded in us as we become older and we accept them as ours, right? Because you talk a lot about that inner narcissist, right? Like it's there, it's reminding you of things. And I think, Emma, this is what comes up for me. I think at some point in time, I think that we all have to go through a level of a shock, right? Of this is not actually what I thought it was, Because
Yeah.
for me, that's the only way I was able to understand what was actually happening. Because it was like, wait a minute, that's not what is happening. Like it started to really become a shock. And because of that, I think that you also have to realize that there's a process that comes after that. So what you do, Emma, and how, and especially for those of you who are in business and you're like, okay, yeah, I can relate to some of this. Um, this goes so deep that you don't want to do it by yourself. Like you don't,
Yeah, it's
you
but
don't
the
want to do
cool Yeah, absolutely. It's deep stuff and people are afraid to go there. But I'm telling you, it is so worth it because this affects every single area of your life. You know, we've all heard that expression, the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So
it.
if you have the fawning response in your work, that's going to be affecting how you are with your kids, how you are with everyone. It's a pervasive pattern. It's not going to be restricted to one compartment of your life. So working on unwinding yourself from these roles is really powerful way to level yourself up because it changes the frequency that you're operating on quite literally, and people will treat you differently because you're kind of vibing at a whole different level.
Yeah, and the study talked about how it does also affect a person's ability to separate their identity from the emotional chaos of others. So I can see that a lot, especially, listen, y'all, like I've heard people take on their clients' cases. I say a case because it should have just been a simple, they pay you, you get the service, boom, right? But I've literally seen where um, I actually had someone that I was working with, but she told me that this happened before I started working with her. So it didn't happen while I was working with her, y'all, because y'all know I don't play that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But but she was taking on clients, right?
Yeah.
And one of the clients that she took on, she started to support in other ways. So it went from the client, getting a huge discount on the service. And then next thing you know, she's like bringing this client, food and aid for her kids. And next thing you know, her client's kid is coming to her house because she needs more help. And what I thought about was, why is there a doorway for people to use your business to get into your personal life?
Yeah, and this is the fawn response. This is where you're like, oh yeah, absolutely. And this women have that particularly, like this need to be agreeable, to be liked. So you fawn, you just say yes when you really mean no. You just wanted them to like you because you need
Yeah.
that validation. And that's because you're not validating yourself. And that's like the trauma, that's the wound. You're not valid when you're not validating yourself, you need to receive that validation from someone else. And that's not healthy because the people go and people change their mind and people decide they don't like you anymore. And is that going to destroy you when they turn around and say something nasty to you? You know, you've got to build value yourself without
Yeah.
needing anyone else to reflect that back to you. That's real power. You know,
Hmm.
relying on someone else for that is a bad idea always, because when that person moves on or when that person isn't there anymore, what are you going to do? You got to rely on yourself and
Yeah.
get help from other people, but you've got to be self-reliant. It's all about having balance. You know, we're talking about people who don't know how to delegate, but also you need to rely on yourself, but also have the balance to give things to other people to do. But you've got to be able to rely on yourself, and that comes from really trusting yourself as well.
So there's so many points. We have to do a hard stop, guys, because we have to get out of here before the end of the hour. But I do want to just say this because we're going to go over this again next week.
Yeah,
Emma, you touched on some of these areas already, but it's like, they talked about the hyper independence as a trauma response, right? Like being
yeah,
that lone wolf. I don't think
yeah.
that is healthy. And
No.
we have too many, of us out here trying to do it alone. And it's just like, okay. And then you have sabotaging success, like that unworthiness wound That's something that comes up as well, because that's when we start undercharging. Like we're just not charging what we are putting out there with the value that we have. And it just looks weird. And I'll share my story that I've shared plenty of times with you guys where, hey, I was undercharging and one of my clients told me. It was very embarrassing at the time because it was very true. Okay. And then I just want to cover this last part, because this is the last area that we're going to cover, period, in this part of the series. And Emma,
Yeah.
I want to hear your take on it, because it talks about this being something that we need to correct. The things that we're experiencing in this series, guys, in this trauma matrix, if you're saying that, hey, I can see where that has impacted me, you need to get support, because what happens is there is a replication of family power structures that happens.
Yeah.
So there's a dynamic of unhealed family trauma that often recreates hierarchies, right? And it does that, right? You can do that with all kind of areas. Bosses become symbolic parents, team members become siblings, old roles resurface. Emma, you were talking about how we just kind of replace the face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every
Um,
time it's the same boyfriend with a different face. Yeah. We've all experienced that one. Or we've had friends who've done that. Oh my
Listen,
God.
I can relate. I'm telling y'all, I remember having a boyfriend that did the exact same behaviors as a previous boyfriend, and I got out of there. I was like, "Oh, you are the same person." It's not even like a
But isn't it
so
funny that
definitely,
you attract the same kind of person again and again? That's not a coincidence.
yeah. And so you're speaking truth, but this part says that you have loyalty to dysfunction. I've seen this
Yes.
so many times, just
Oh my
remaining
God, yes.
toxic.
We do. Because we all do. Me too. I was talking about being the scapegoat in my family, and it still happens to me occasionally, even though I'm aware of it and I'm kind of aware of it when it's happening. I don't get so shamed by it anymore. But yeah, we imprint these roles. These are shame-based roles that we take on in dysfunctional families. And let's be real, most families, it's estimated that about 70 to 80% of families in Western society are dysfunctional. It's just a matter of to what degree. And maybe you have an alcoholic parent, or maybe you have a single parent who's struggling, or financial, some kind of dysfunction there, because our parents didn't do trauma work. It just wasn't the thing. So there's generational trauma down there from all the things that have happened only a few generations back. So we're left carrying that. And as children, you imprint this pattern. It becomes like this feels normal. This is what family feels like. Family feels like chaos. This is what I'm used to. And then unconsciously, you go looking for more chaos. This is why you get the boyfriend again and again. The same chaotic pattern is playing out again and again, because unconsciously, your mind is like a homing beacon. You're kind of like, oh, beep, 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 beep. Even though you might say, don't want that, there's like the homing beacon in the back of your head says, oh, yeah, that looks really good. That feels comfortable and home, like home. So it's not a conscious thing. It's a very unconscious pattern. And like Carl Jung says, until you make the unconscious conscious, you're going to keep repeating and living out the same pattern and call it fate. So we want to take back our power and start creating a life rather than living the same patterns again and again and feeling like we have no control, because you do. You just have to make those unconscious patterns conscious and heal the parts of you that are still kind of trauma bonded to them, that still feel safe being a victim, or I have to hyper functioning, or being the hero, and let go of all that shame.
Yeah, I think familiarity is so bad sometimes, because you're just like, oh, it's so familiar, it's so comfortable. But the truth is, some of that can just be the toxicity that you've known your whole life. I was just talking to my cousin earlier about some family matters, and I'm just thinking that, even when you're speaking, that when these things happen, when you have trauma in your family, whether it's, loss of some kind or some type of major change, you start to realize the truth about, that's under the layer. And when that happens, for a lot of us, we realize that, we are affected, a lot by how we're raised by people who, may have had whatever their issues were. So strategy, I think, is really what comes up for me, right? For anyone who is like, okay, well, that's all good. I like what you're talking about, but what do I do? Strategy. Because in order to actually move forward, you're going to have to get out of this trauma matrix, and you're going to have to strategize to do that. Emma, you can provide that for them. How can they connect with you in order to get that type of support?
Send the best thing is send me a DM. Send me a DM with the word trauma, or yeah, let's go for trauma, and we can start clearing it. We can start clearing out the trauma, and this is this will change. This can change your whole life. Once you start doing this work. So get out of the trauma matrix and reclaim who the person that you're here to be, because you know what, the world really needs you. This is not the time to sit back, and the world is kind of on fire right now, and it needs people who are being authentic, because that's not happening much out there. So it's time for you to step up. We need you.
Yeah, don't be defeated. This is a time to actually be in the role of leadership. If you're going to be a leader,
Yeah.
step up like one. But don't be in Boston and weighed down by all of these obligations that the society and maybe you felt all your life. Like, this is just a new beginning for a lot of us. So thank you, Emma, for joining me. As per usual, you guys, we will see you next week. Definitely DM me if you have any questions about the live, about the channel, about partnership, whatever it is that you have going on in your business. And before you get to a space of really taking action, if you are stuck anywhere in this place of rewiring the trauma matrix, anything we talked about today, make sure you reach out to Emma, because she is a trusted partner. And then you can come over to me once you get all that stuff out of the way. All right. Love
Yeah.
you guys. Have an amazing night.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye, y'all.